And we're back. I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from the office, North Georgia's only live online morning show. And we continue our series of daily from 1 to 2 every day, bringing you candidates so you, the voters, can get the most information to make your decision here in the primary. We're joined now on the phone with Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor David Shaffer. Mr. Shaffer, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Let's get right into running for Lieutenant Governor. Why is this your chosen next step in your political career? I did read you go all the way back from being the chair of the Republican Party, and I'll say this: I've heard you tell this before, and maybe you want to share it. But you chaired the Republican Party when the Republican Party was trying to get control in the state. You went through those times with the Republican Party all the way up to now being the Senate pro temp. I think you were elected in, is it 2002? Am I wrong with that? Am I wrong with that? February of 2002 you took that office? Am I
That's when I was elected to the state Senate, yes.
State
and then
Senate,
I became President pro tem in 2013.
Why Lieutenant Governor? Why is this the next step in your that you're seeking in politics?
In Georgia, the lieutenant governor is elected separately from the governor, and his or her principal duty is to be the president of the state Senate, where I've served for the last 15 years. I've spent my entire adult life trying to build up the Republican Party, elect Republican candidates to office, and then holding them accountable to the conservative promises that they've made on the campaign trail. That's what I've tried to do in the 16 years I've served in the state Senate, is implement the promises that we made when we were campaigning for office.
Okay, so you have worked through all the way. You remember? Did you serve in the Senate in the minority when it was in the minority?
When I was elected in 2002, in February 2002, Roy Barnes was the governor of Georgia, and the Democrats had a majority in both the House and the Senate. And then shortly thereafter, we elected Sonny Perdue as governor. We took a majority in the Senate, and then 2 years later, a majority in the House.
So you've served on both sides, the minority and the majority, and so you've seen the difficulty of trying to get a bill to the floor from the minority side of the aisle and get it voted through, or get an amendment on a bill, to now having control of that side.
That's right.
Well, let me ask you this. Explain to our viewers, because sometimes, no disrespect to the intelligence, even myself, I get confused sometimes. So what is the responsibility of the Senate pro tem? We just came out of the 2018 legislative session. What is the responsibility of the Senate president pro tem on the floor?
So the lieutenant governor is the president of the Senate, and the president pro tem presides in his absence. He serves as the president when the lieutenant governor is absent from the chamber, much as the lieutenant governor would serve as the governor if the governor was ever unavailable. The lieutenant governor has, the president pro tem also has some administrative roles in terms of managing the support staff of the Senate and in serving on the committees that make leadership decisions for the Senate. Now, I stepped down as president pro tem at the very beginning of the session so that I could concentrate full time on my campaign for lieutenant governor.
Yes, sir. I understand that. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. What is the what in this past session? You're out there on the campaign trail and you're talking to voters. When you talk to voters, what in this last session passed as far as legislation that you are out there, it's in your campaign speech and you're excited that this legislation was passed for the voters in Georgia? And then what legislation did not make it through this past session that you supported or thought should make it through to the governor's desk?
Well, one of the things I'm most proud of is the income tax cut that we passed during this session of the General Assembly to return $5 billion to the taxpayers in the next 3 years. It lowers the state income tax from 6% to 5.75%, then down to 5.5%. So basically almost a 10% cut in the state income tax. I sponsored a constitutional amendment 3 years ago that was approved by the voters that caps the state income tax, that takes away the authority of the General Assembly to raise it any further. We're the only state in the country that has a constitutional guarantee that our income tax rate will never go up, and I'm in favor of lowering it. And I'm glad that we took the first steps during this session of the General Assembly, and hope to take additional steps if I have a chance to serve as Lieutenant Governor.
Well, let me ask you this: on both sides, whether you're in the House of Representatives or the state Senate, whether you're the Speaker or the Lieutenant Governor, there's always the legislation that makes it to the floor, the amendments that make it onto the legislation, and then there's that legislation that does not make it. And a lot of times there's accusations that big business, lobbyists, Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, business friendly, does not want certain legislation to go through, and you hear that. So let me ask you, as Lieutenant Governor, we have not. Now, we're a red state, supposedly, and don't take that wrong, sir, but supposedly we're a red state in the South with a Republican House, Republican Senate, and Republican governor. But we have states all around us that have passed several different religious liberty, religious freedom bills. And here in Georgia, we don't seem every year to be able to get something passed. And when we do, the governor has vetoed it. Were you in favor? Did you support the religious organization adoption amendment to that did not make it on to the foster care bill? But do you support that? And as a Lieutenant Governor, what kind of religious freedom bill could come to the floor that Lieutenant Governor David Shaffer could support?
I supported the adoption amendment. I was actually, Brian, born in a home for unwed mothers and adopted as an infant, and I'm through Catholic Charities, and I'm a strong supporter of adoption, and I'm a strong supporter of faith-based adoption agencies. And the amendment that you're talking about simply protected faith-based adoption agencies from government interference if they followed the teachings of their affiliated church or religion in the placement of children. And I thought that was a common sense proposal that will encourage faith-based philanthropy. And I was disappointed. That it didn't make its way all the way through the General Assembly.
So you don't feel that's discrimination in yourself because maybe there's several adoption agencies out there that are not faith-based or whatever, where there are several agencies where anyone defining themselves in any way could go and seek to adopt a child. Am I correct on that? Or
it's anti-discrimination because it protects the adoption agencies from discriminatory or retaliatory action from the government and encourages them to operate. We've seen Catholic Charities shut down in 4 states throughout the country from conducting adoptions because people had filed complaints with human rights commissions or other government agencies because of the fact that they were following the teachings of the Catholic Church in the placement of the children. We've got a massive foster care crisis in this state, Brian, and we need all hands on deck. We want faith-based adoption agencies, secular adoption agencies. We want everyone pitching in to try to solve this problem, and it doesn't make sense for the government to be acting against church-based or faith-based adoption agencies as they try to help children.
Okay, well, I don't want to stay on that too long, but I'm listening to you, and based on what you're saying, Mr. Shaffer, because these are things that we read and we hear about, but bringing different companies to Atlanta and giving them tax abatements and deals like Mercedes and so many others, just the list goes on, that these big corporations are concerned on bills that could pass that would discriminate, as they call it, against same-sex couples from adopting in an agency. Now we have HQ2, the headquarters for Amazon, wanting to come here. And I mean, I'm reading articles in several of the publications where maybe that bill alone and that mood of Georgia could possibly keep them out. You would not let outsiders, per se, affect your decision or what you just said is your belief this morning on our show, if that came to the floor?
No, we've got to act in the interest of Georgians. I'm always going to put Georgia first. I don't think that protecting faith-based adoption agencies will have any impact on Amazon one way or another. Texas passed a bill earlier or late last year, very strongly supporting faith-based adoption agencies, and Texas has not one but two cities on Amazon's top 20 list. So I think that a lot of times, Amazon or other sort of business considerations will be thrown into these debates that really have nothing to do with the issues that we're debating.
Okay, let me ask you this. Let's switch gears, because we hear in the past 8 years, and I'm not asking you this morning to comment one way or the other, positive or negative on the governor, but we've heard for the last 8 years we continue to get statistics on crime and his focus on crime bills and so on and so forth in Georgia. But we are sitting with Atlanta actually being a hub for illegals, a hub for drug trafficking. I mean, we've got a lot of problems. Gangs, we have gangs all over the state now that have infiltrated this state. So let's stay with like drugs and drug trafficking through Atlanta, and how, as Lieutenant Governor, what kind of bills would you like to see to stiffen penalties or maybe get the federal government involved? What say you?
Well, first, I would say I think Governor Deal's done a good job, and I've been a supporter of his. I don't see every issue exactly the same way that he does, but I do think he's done a good job as our governor. We do have some significant challenges. Gangs are increasingly and sadly becoming a problem, and we've got to confront those as aggressively as possible. Some of these gangs are foreign based, and controlling illegal immigration is part of the solution to that problem. Countries that don't control their borders cease to be countries, and which is why I support President Trump's efforts to secure our borders, to prevent the flow of people into the country illegally.
Well, let me just ask this. Some people, and I would like to hear, because as the Lieutenant Governor, and again, that's where I started, you as a Lieutenant Governor do get the call on bills that come up and go into committees and come out of committees and go for a vote. You have somewhat leadway of guiding those bills through the Senate. So what kind of bills, and again, I'm not trying to be negative on the governor today, but there's been a lot of discussion that this has not been the strongest administration, or the bills that have been sent to his desk have not been the strongest on illegal immigrants in Georgia, from driver's license to giving driver's license tests in so many multiple languages, one thing after another. The state does not have a very good grade card when it comes to passing legislation on illegals. What say you, and what kind of legislation would you like to see brought to the Senate, if any, concerning enforcing some Georgia laws or changing some Georgia laws?
Well, we've banned sanctuary cities and sanctuary campuses, and both of those bills have been signed into law. I introduced additional legislation on sanctuary cities during this session of the General Assembly that will give the state criminal jurisdiction to investigate cities that that choose to become sanctuary cities in an effort to prevent that from occurring. I supported the driver's license bill, which I thought was a very very reasonable. It simply has separately designed driver's licenses for people who are citizens and people who are not citizens of the country. You know, the reality is that the driver's license is the universal identification card, and we need to make sure that it's not used to allow people who are not citizens, you know, to cast votes in elections for a host of other things that should be reserved only to citizens of the United States of Georgia.
So that is a bill, the driver's license bill, that as Lieutenant Governor would have your support?
Absolutely. I supported it as a state senator. I voted for it every time and would support it as Lieutenant Governor as well.
All right. I know I told you about 20 minutes, but I can't get out without what kind of budget? Now, I've read several things where zero-based budgeting, and I know you've been involved in that since your time in the Senate. What kind of budget changes would you say we need to maybe get some runaway spending? These are my words, out of control. And I'm going to say this. I hear different explanations, and I just use the 5-year period. I know it goes back much longer than that, but the 5-year period of, in the last 5 years, the Georgia state budget has gone up, okay? Has gone up $5.5 billion, an average of $1 billion every year. Is that really necessary, and is that what's required to facilitate the growth and to parallel growth, or is there places we can cut and do something with this budget and reduce the spending?
Those numbers are basically right. Now, when the economy crashed in 2008, revenues fell, and we had to cut almost $5 billion from the budget. But you're right. Now that the economy is growing again, revenues are coming in, and we've got additional money to spend. What I found in my 16 years is that we will spend every dollar that we get. And so we've got to put, you know, which is one of the reasons that I'm in favor of lowering the income tax. It will reduce the number of dollars that's available to us and force us to be better stewards of the tax dollars. When you have fewer dollars available, you'll be more efficient and careful in the spending decisions that you make. Which, you know, one of the things I'm most proud of, Brian, is the zero-based budgeting initiative. When I was elected to the state senate in 2002, Georgia was on a continuation budget, so that the budget document that we voted on only described about 3 or 4% of the state spending, the new programs. And once a new program was passed by the General Assembly and signed into law, it automatically rolled over into each succeeding budget of the state under a single line item called continuation. And I introduced my very first term legislation to move us to zero-based budgeting, and I reintroduced it every 2 years for the next decade until Governor Deal finally signed it into law. And I think that helped us be a better steward of the tax dollars as well.
Didn't on your zero-based budgeting, I was reading when you supported and you pushed for zero-based budgeting and got that signed into law by Governor Deal, did you not also support, and I understand you're only one of many down there, that any tax revenue over and above the budget be returned to the taxpayers? Did I read something on that?
Absolutely. I've sponsored constitutional amendments that would, you know, require surpluses to be either put into the rainy day fund or returned to the taxpayers to prevent that money from being pork barreled through the supplemental budget. That's a practice that has largely stopped.
Well, wait a minute. Before you say that, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I followed that and I agree with you. It should be returned to the citizen, any surplus, but this past year we had a surplus and we had a budget amendment to spend it. Okay, I don't want to get the numbers wrong because I think it's in the area 170 million or something. I don't know what it was, but it was in the millions that we had a surplus. And when you look at the budget amendment to spend that additional surplus, it didn't look like it went to things that really seemed to be unfunded or that crucial. So would you have said, like, this past year we should have returned that surplus to the citizens?
either returned it or added it to the shortfall reserve, so-called rainy day fund. I mean, we've got $2 billion that we've put into the shortfall reserve, which is a lot of money. It sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money, but that only operates state government for about 30 days. And the reality is the money that we receive doesn't come in equally each month. You've got more sales tax revenue around the holidays. You've got more income tax revenue, around April 15th and the various tax filing deadlines. So you've got to have some cash money available to operate the government in those months where the revenue is down because it's not regularly received. And so, but yes, we've got to be as careful as possible with the tax dollars of the state, recognizing that they first have to be earned by somebody before we take it from them and make the decision to spend it.
Last question. I know we're out of time, and I appreciate you for staying longer than I told you we'd be on. But I just want to go to the Second Amendment, your support of the Second Amendment, where you stand. And I do have to ask, like I've asked most people, where do you stand on constitutional carry? I'm one of the strongest supporters of the Second Amendment under the Gold Dome. I've sponsored or co-sponsored 24 pieces of legislation designed to protect and expand our Second Amendment rights. I'm the only candidate for Lieutenant Governor who's been rated A+ by the National Rifle Association. My two opponents in the primary are nominally pro-Second Amendment, but neither one of them has ever sponsored a single piece of Second Amendment legislation. Okay. You didn't answer constitutional carry, but that's okay. I do know that's a big one. There's a lot of states that have constitutional carry and a lot that do not, that have concealed carry, much like we have here, or open carry in Georgia. Why do you think? Why do you think? How did you get? Why did Ted Cruz endorse David Shaffer? I mean, go ahead.
He endorsed me because I'm the most conservative candidate running for lieutenant governor. Let me also say the Second Amendment is clear. Most of the amendments of the that make up the Bill of Rights have some sort of limitation on the government interfering with free speech or free religion or free press. The Second Amendment is not a limitation on government power. It's an absolute declaration that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, which is why I've been such a strong supporter of the Second Amendment and every piece of legislation protecting and expanding our Second Amendment rights. But I'm proud to have been endorsed by Ted Cruz, by Rick Santorum, by Newt Gingrich, by the Georgia Republican Assembly, which is the state affiliate of the National Federation of Republican Assemblies, and by the Republican Liberty Caucus, because I have spent 15 years fighting for the conservative values that we all share.
Well, Mr. Shaffer, we like we tell all candidates, we wish you well in the campaign, and we thank you for your willingness to serve, and we'd like to have you back on real soon. First opportunity we can get you back on, and if your campaign travels up here to North Georgia, let us know so we can get you in the studio, maybe stop by.
Thank you, Brian. This has been great.
Thank you, sir. You have a nice day. Okay, we've been talking with Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor David Shaffer, and we will try to get the other candidates on. We promise, one at a time. Here's what we're doing, and just so you know before we go to break, is every day after the show, we're sending 2 or 3 messages out. I've got a message into candidate for Secretary of State Josh McCoon. We're sending messages out. If you are watching any of the interviews and you want your candidate or a candidate out there that's saying, hey, how do I get on? We're not leaving you out. Send me a message, 706-889-9700. We'll get you scheduled into the show. We offer everybody these opportunities. The one thing that you need to know is all the candidates are coming on and they don't know the question. So they're stand up. These are stand-up people, and no matter whether you agree with their positions, they're stand-up people in the fact that they come on, they don't know if I'm going to ask constitutional carry, they don't know if I'm going to ask the budget, and they come on and they go with it, and I respect that. That's stand-up. So 706-889-9700 or chief@veterannews.com if you are a candidate out there and wondering how to get on the show. And just like I said, there's no real order. These interviews are all getting clipped, and they're getting put on veterannews.com under Election 2018. They're under there. Also, you can find them on our YouTube channel, because our goal is to get you the most information when making your decision in the voting booth. And like I said, I send 2 or 3 out a day. We're scheduling a couple, sometimes 3. And I'm your host, BKP. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back, Amanda.